Thank you, Nina and Ricky. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines. A last-second breakthrough in the global trade war. The clock was ticking, markets were bracing, and then came the truce. But hold on, this story is far from over, as Elon Musk shakes up Washington and trade talks with Canada and Mexico hit the pause button.
We had President Sheinbaum is a woman. I like her very much. We've had good relationships, but we have to stop fentanyl from coming in, whether I like somebody or not, and we have to stop the illegal aliens. I also spoke with Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, and we had a good talk in the morning, but I did ask him a couple of questions, like, banks aren't allowed to do business in Canada. Canada is very tough.
But there's a major breaking news on the China front. At midnight, American tariffs slammed into place, a 10% hit on the Chinese imports. And Beijing's revenge, lightning fast. Within minutes, China fired back, targeting American energy, hitting U.S. coal and gas with 15% tariffs. They didn't stop there, slapping new duties on everything from crude oil to tractors.
On this issue, we have repeatedly expressed China's position. We always believe that there are no winners in trade wars and tariffs.
And the news starts now. China swiftly retaliated against new U.S. tariffs today, announcing duties on American coal, gas, and other goods, just minutes after U.S. levies on Chinese imports took effect. The tit-for-tat response marks a sharp escalation in trade tensions between the world's largest economies, triggered by President Trump's demands that China halt the flow of fentanyl precursors to the U.S.
U.S. tariffs on China are now in effect, with an additional 10% duty placed on all their goods from 1 minute past midnight on Tuesday. China retaliated within minutes, with its finance ministry announcing it will apply a 15% tariff on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas on February 10th, as well as an additional 10% on crude oil, farm equipment, and some vehicles. A White House spokesperson had said Monday that President Donald Trump will be speaking with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in the next couple of days, as the world's two largest economies seek a deal that could avert a broader trade war and avoid a deepening conflict. The call would be Trump and Xi's first known talks since Trump took office on January 20th. On Saturday, Trump ordered sweeping tariffs on goods not only from China, but also Mexico and Canada. Part of demands they stop the flow of illegal fentanyl, a leading cause of drug overdoses in the U.S. Trump backed away from his tariff threat against Mexico and Canada on Monday after speaking to leaders of both countries. Before China's Lunar New Year holiday, a foreign ministry spokesperson insisted that Beijing has always firmly safeguarded its national interests, but signaled an openness to talks.
On this issue, we have repeatedly expressed China's position. We always believe that there are no winners in trade wars and tariffs.
On Monday, Trump threatened to further ramp up tariffs on China. He described Tuesday's tariffs as an opening salvo. During his campaign for the presidency, Trump had promised a steeper levy of 60% on Chinese goods. The U.S. has said China is the primary source of the precursor chemicals synthesized into fentanyl by drug cartels in Mexico.
We don't want fentanyl coming into our country. Now, we had another big thing, speaking of China. China's involved with the Panama Canal. They won't be for long. And that's the way it has to be.
So the roadmap of tariffs moving forward is we expect that the U.S. will continue to put tariffs on most countries that they have a trade deficit with, particularly large. Think of the European Union, where the U.S. has a trade deficit with. Think of Vietnam, Thailand, these countries, Australia to some degree. And part of that is because the U.S. feels taken advantage of. They are taking our resources and our money, but not necessarily treating us in a fair way. Some of that is market access. Others are just the fact of fentanyl. Right? The U.S. is really unhappy with the fentanyl use because it's killing Americans. And so we're at the point now where the Trump administration feels emboldened to actually do something about it.
China has called fentanyl America's problem and said it would challenge the tariffs at the World Trade Organization.
Now, China has announced a series of retaliatory measures targeting American businesses, and that includes Google, agricultural equipment manufacturers, and PVH Corp, the parent company of Calvin Klein. Now, these actions came immediately following the implementation of new U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports. Take a look.
China on Tuesday announced a wide range of measures targeting U.S. businesses, including Google, as well as farm equipment makers and fashion brand Calvin Klein's owner. The news came minutes after additional U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods took effect. The measures were announced as Beijing also slapped tariffs on some U.S. products such as coal and gas. It was something of a rapid response to the new duties on Chinese goods imposed by Donald Trump and marks escalating trade tensions between the world's two biggest economies. China's Commerce Ministry said it put PVH Corp, the holding company for brands including Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, and US biotechnology firm Illumina on its unreliable entity list. Companies added to the blacklist can be subject to fines and a range of other sanctions. These include a freeze on trade and revocation of work permits for foreign staff. Separately, China's State Administration of Market Regulation said Google was suspected of violating the country's anti-monopoly law and said it initiated an investigation into the company in accordance with the law. Google products, such as its search engine, are blocked in China, but it works with local partners such as advertisers in the country. Google, PVH and Illumina did not immediately respond to requests for comment outside regular US business hours.
Are we on the verge of another trade war? Markets took a dive yesterday when President Trump announced new tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China. But then he hit the pause on Mexico and Canada for now, giving Wall Street a breather. And now Europe is bracing for impact after President Trump said that the EU is next, calling its trade policies an atrocity. How is Europe planning to respond? And what happens if tariffs hit? The European Union sends billions of dollars worth of goods to the U.S., from machinery and chemicals to cars. But could that trade be in jeopardy? Trump says he's ready to act.
It will definitely happen with the European Union, I can tell you that, because they've really taken advantage of us. And, you know, we have over a $300 billion deficit. They don't take our cars, they don't take our farm products, they take almost nothing. And we take everything from them, millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. So the UK is way out of line, and we'll see the UK, but European Union is really out of line. UK is out of line, but I'm sure that one, I think that one can be worked out. But the European Union it's an atrocity, what they've done.
But Brussels isn't buying it. EU leaders insist there's no major trade imbalance and are urging caution.
What is clear, there are no winners in trade wars. If United States and the US start the trade war, then the one laughing on the side is China. We are very interlinked. We need America, and America needs us as well. The tariffs increase costs. They are not good for the jobs, not good for the customers either. That is clear.
When targeted, unfairly or arbitrarily, the European Union will respond firmly. This weekend we witnessed how steep tariffs were imposed on Canada and Mexico. Those tariffs raise business costs, they harm workers and consumers, they create unnecessary economic disruption and drive inflation. We do not see much good coming out of this. So we prioritize productive discussions and engage early. At the same time, the European Union remains also steadfast in its multilateral commitments, be it from our development aid to our climate targets.
So will Europe fight back? Some leaders say they're ready.
Both the US and Europe benefit from the exchange of goods and services. If customs policy now makes this difficult, it would be bad for the US and bad for Europe. It is clear that as a strong economic area, we can organize things ourselves and can also react to customs policies with customs policies. That is what we must and will do. But the perspective and the goal should be that we proceed in such a way that it amounts to cooperation.
It's simple. We think the priority is the strategic agenda and the security of our borders. If we are attacked on trade topics, as a power that holds, Europe has to make itself respected and react.
If during the time of this direct Russian threat and Chinese expansion and all these very dangerous things that we will, try to look for and find a reason to be in conflict among allies. I think that we have to do everything to avoid this totally unnecessary and stupid tariff wars or trade wars.
But not everyone wants to escalate the situation. Some leaders believe diplomacy is the way forward.
We have to switch to positive economic agenda with United States. We have to buy more LNG from United States, like my country does. We buy about 52% of our total request for LNG from United States, in such a way diversifying energy resources, and we are less dependent on the Russian LNG. And of course, other possible cooperation with United States, procurement of military equipment from United States would be the matter which creates a constructive and not destructive economic agenda. So I think those are the issues, and we have to discuss it very seriously because the time is running, and time is not is very precious asset.
Could this all blow over? Some analysts think Trump's trade strategy might create so much economic turmoil.
So if the US imposes tariffs on the EU, the big question is what the EU will do in response. If the EU imposes tariffs on the US as well, the implication for the EU economy will potentially be significant, with weaker growth and higher inflation. Being an important trading partner for the UK, that will have implication on the UK as well, because if you have a weaker market there, exports to the EU from the UK will be affected as a result. We'll find it harder to export to the US if our products are going to cost more. And if we're going to retaliate here in the UK, we will also find that our import costs from the US are going to be higher, and that would feed into higher inflation here as well. Some economies will benefit as a result of that trade being diverted, or them having an advantage because their products will be comparatively cheaper as a result. But it's very hard to tell at the moment what the net impact is going to be until you know what the full scale of the tariff war is going to shape up to be.
We've seen this before, U.S. tariffs on EU steel and aluminum, Europe hitting back with taxes on whiskey and motorcycles, and those disputes were settled. But this time, the stakes could be even higher. U.S. President Donald Trump has hit the pause button on his plan to impose tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods exported to his country. Now, Trump has planned to impose a steep 25% tariff beginning today, but backed off at the last minute. Thomas Eyelikeness for more.
The 30-day delay came after Trump spoke with the leaders of Canada and Mexico. Trump says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised to deploy new technology and personnel along the Canada-U.S. border to stop the flow of fentanyl. Hours earlier, Trump paused the tariffs on Mexico after Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to send 10,000 National Guard troops to the border to stem the flow of drugs.
And they've agreed to put in 10,000 soldiers permanently, like forever, 10,000 soldiers at their side of the border and stop fentanyl and illegal aliens from coming into our country. They have a big incentive to do. Other than that, we've agreed to talk and consider various other things. We haven't agreed on tariffs yet.
She says the agreement also includes a commitment to prevent trafficking of high-powered weapons in Mexico.
I told him we wanted him to pause the tariffs, so we reached that agreement. But I also explained to him that the amounts of high-potency weapons that enter from the United States into Mexico is a serious issue. He asked me how long I wanted to pause tariffs. I said forever. He told me how much time. I told him a month. But I'm sure that during this month, we'll be able to deliver good results for his people and the people of Mexico.
Trump says the month-long suspension will be used to engage further negotiations. The tariffs have been unpopular in both Canada and Mexico, and many Americans fear them as well. They're beginning to realize that Trump's trade war is going to hit them in the pocketbook. Alicia Hale owns a beauty supply shop in Georgia, and she says tariffs will hurt average Americans.
You know, a lot of poor people think that Trump is the answer, but they're going to quickly come to realize that, you know, you voted for him thinking that the price of eggs are going to go down, and what we're going to see is an increase in everything, including stress.
Hale says small businesses will be hurt because people are buying less, and that ultimately could lead to job losses. Hale says it's time for people to stand up for themselves.
I just hope that the American people can rally for what's right, and not allow the 1% to continue to drill holes, not only in our livelihood, but in our health and our social activities.
Small business owner Jalea Hemmings is also concerned about the prospect of rising prices.
Of course, we're nervous. We're hoping that this doesn't last long and that they can come to some form of a resolve because, you know, as a small business, we do get hit the hardest.
The threat of tariffs has also taken a toll on American stock markets, although Monday's losses have been tempered by Trump's delay in implementing the surcharges. For now, though, Americans and those who export their goods to them remain anxious, waiting to see how this trade dispute is going to play out. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
Tonight, the spotlight is on the influential alliance between Trump and Musk as they drive efforts to reshape federal agencies and overhaul government spending. Now, this partnership has already led to dramatic actions, including the Trump administration's decision to lock employees of the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, out of their Washington, D.C. headquarters for a second day today as part of a plan to close the agency. Now, in response, two Democratic senators have pledged to block the confirmation of State Department nominees in protest, signaling a deepening political clash over the future of federal institutions. Take a look.
Furloughed employees and contractors protested in front of the USAID headquarters after the Trump administration on Monday moved to shut down the agency. Employees have been locked out of its headquarters since Trump ordered a freeze on most US foreign aid hours after taking office. USAID distributes billions of dollars of humanitarian aid around the world. However, Trump has said he wants to ensure it aligns with his America First policy. USAID provided 42% of all humanitarian aid tracked by the United Nations in 2024 and accounts for less than 1% of the total United States budget. Billionaire Elon Musk has had the agency in his sights for closure and is tasked with downsizing the federal government.
There are lots of reasons to care about U.S. development and humanitarian policy, but its relative size as a share of the budget is not one of them. So there can always be improvements and reforms for effectiveness and efficiency, but it wouldn't make, the priority list in looking at programs across the U.S. government if that's your intent in terms of cost savings. It's hard to quite wrap my head around why it's such a target, but USAID packs a punch, really, for the amount that it spends of U.S. taxpayer dollars. It has a big impact around the world. and it's not viewed favorably by a number of leaders in the current administration. That said, it's historically had a lot of bipartisan support.
A senior White House official speaking anonymously said Trump was considering merging US aid into the State Department and had entrusted Elon to oversee the efficiency of this agency.
So this has nothing to do with making the U.S. government more efficient.
Democratic lawmakers stood with protesters in front of USAID headquarters on Monday. Speaking to reporters, Senators Brian Schatz and Chris Van Hollen said they planned to block confirmation of Trump nominees for State Department positions in retaliation, while House Rep Gerald Connolly from Virginia laid out the agency's impact.
It is the lead development agency in the world, and no one elected Elon Musk to dismantle it. We are going to fight in every way we can, in the courts, in public opinion, with the bully pulpit, in the halls of Congress, and here at AID itself.
Just like the president who is elected to something cannot impound the money of the people, we don't have a fourth branch of government called Elon Musk, and that's going to become real clear.
Elon Musk makes billions of dollars based off of his business with China. And China is cheering at this action today. There is no question that the billionaire class trying to take over our government right now is doing it based on self-interest.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters in San Salvador he was now the acting head of USAID, calling the agency completely unresponsive.
Their attitude is we don't have to answer to you because we are independent, we answer to no one. Well, that's not true, and that will no longer be the case.
Meanwhile, Noam Unga, an analyst with Washington think tank CSIS, believes the move could come at the cost of the US position in the world.
So the US is actually currently involved in an intense and intensifying competition, a geostrategic competition, largely with China, but also with other adversaries around the world. It actually could have the effect of ceding the battleground or ceding the playing ground, if you will, and others will very enthusiastically fill that void.
The State Department issued worldwide stop work directives after Trump's freeze order, with the exception of emergency food assistance.
Families boarded ferries and extra flights have been scheduled to help people leave Santorini as dozens of tremors shook the Greek island for a fourth day. Now, tremors have been recorded between the volcanic islands of Santorini and Amorgos in the Aegean Sea since Friday. The seismic activity has forced authorities to close schools on the islands until Friday. Bernadette Rangini has more.
Local officials say that permanent residents are not particularly worried as they have been used to quakes. But some who are on the island for work or as tourists are moving out. Many rushed to board the ferry on Monday, including families with baby and children.
We are going to Piraeus. We are going to live there due to fear. What can we do? We are migrants. We came here and we leave again.
Everything is closed. No one works now. The whole island has emptied.
Quakes, some with a magnitude above 4, rattled Santorini every few minutes on Monday. Since Saturday, more than 280 earthquakes have been recorded in the region.
I work on the island. I have been a resident for years. But today, nobody was expecting this to happen. What is happening now on the island is incredible.
People have been advised to stay out of indoor spaces and small ports. Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis is urging people to stay calm. Disaster response units have been deployed on the ground as a precaution.
We have planned for shelters for the population in places without structures and on level surfaces. There are 8 places that can accommodate people. We have recorded all the people with special needs who may need to be transferred at some point during an event. We have made a food distribution plan for those that will be outdoors.
για την σύντηση των ανθρώπων στην Ύπαιθρο.
Experts say the seismic activity on the island will continue for weeks. Some of the island's most populated areas are perched on steep cliffs. Santorini is on what is known as the Hellenic volcanic arc. That's a chain of volcanic islands created by plate tectonics. The last major eruption took place in the 1950s. Greek authorities say the recent minor earthquakes are related to tectonic plate movements instead of volcanic activity. Bernadette Regini for NET25 World News.
And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. A female swimmer has died in a shark attack in the waters of a popular tourist spot on Australia's east coast.
I could hear screaming. Next minute, all hell broke loose. There was choppers in the air, the ambos, and the police were running, and it was just, and I just couldn't believe it. And one of the ladies that was down here comforting one of the locals. I've been here 10 years. This has never happened, and it's going to devastate the community.
Queensland State Police said emergency crews were called to the Warren Beach at Bribie Island, about 80 kilometers north of Brisbane, around 5 p.m. local time on Monday, following reports of a serious shark bite incident. The female was swimming when she was bitten by a shark. The female sustained life-threatening injuries and succumbed to those injuries, according to a police spokesperson in an email. Now, police did not disclose the age of the victim, though Australian media widely reported the victim was a 17-year-old girl. OpenAI said it will develop artificial intelligence products for South Korea with chat app operator Kakao, unveiling a second major alliance with a high-profile Asian partner this week.
OpenAI chief Sam Altman is on a whirlwind tour of Asia, and he's picking up deals as he goes. The week started with a visit to Tokyo, where he announced a partnership with giant Japanese tech investor SoftBank. That will see the pair set up a joint venture in Japan to offer AI services to corporate customers. Altman also demoed a new AI agent.
This can do complex research tasks for you.
Tuesday then saw Altman move on to South Korea. There he signed a deal with Kakao, the country's dominant messaging app firm. It too will use tech developed by the ChatGPT maker for its products. That's a bid to catch local rival Naver, which is seen as being ahead on the integration of AI. Altman said South Korean companies would also be big suppliers to the US Stargate project.
So on Stargate, there will be many Korean companies that are important contributors to the ecosystem there.
That was announced by President Donald Trump shortly after his inauguration, with Altman and other tech leaders by his side.
Beginning immediately, Stargate will be building the physical and virtual infrastructure to power the next generation of advancements in AI, and this will include the construction of colossal data centers, very, very massive structures.
South Korean tech giants including SK Hynix and Samsung are major suppliers of the chips used in such services. And Altman said the country's energy, semiconductor and internet companies made it an important market for OpenAI.
Yeah, it's a great market for us, and I think AI adoption here in general has been quite incredible. There's so much of Korea that makes AI a good fit. If you think about all the industry here, from energy to semiconductors to internet companies.
He's next expected to head for India. Reuters sources say Altman is likely to meet with country Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Wednesday.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Have a good night. Thank you.